Hello, everybody. Welcome to our web talk about circular economy. So also we see some developments in the COVID area. We all know that climate change is and will be the most toughest ambition and challenge we will see in the years to come. And of course, business has to play a crucial role in combating climate change and reaching climate targets. But we all know that we still need to agree to the right framework settings and that it's very important to get to an international approach. I think COP26 has shown us again, so the game is always the same. We know where we want to go, but we still have to fix a lot of things. And especially important is to bring all of the countries around the globe into this game and to bring them on the same field of playing. So the thing is that we are very sure that circular economy has a potential to become a game changer here. There is a clear nexus between circular economy and climate change or climate protection, and this is increasingly discussed, and we want to do this again today. But of course, there's a difference in awareness around the globe on this issue. I will throw in just 4 tools. So it's repairing, it's redistributing, it's repurposing, and it's recycling. Just to name a few tools from the kit we already see in circular economy. So what we need to do is, so we have to create awareness that circular economy is not just tools, it's a system change. And I think this is increasingly discovered. And the tools I mentioned are not really new to us, but making a strategy out of this and really changing the way we are processing, we are producing, we are using things on this planet, getting away from a linear path to a circular path. I think this is absolutely key to reach those targets. And I would add that it's not only climate change what we are facing. If we are talking about circular economy, we sure have to talk about a global population of about 10 billion people in a few decades, 2050 and ongoing. And I think all of these people should have the same right to economic, environmental, and social prosperity. And therefore, it's, if I may be as blunt as this, I think it's a no-brainer. We need circular economy as a global system and a global strategy growing. And this is why I'm very glad that we have this web talk today, making voices heard on how we can get on track with the circular economy. And we have very distinguished speakers today. A big thanks and welcome to these speakers. And I would introduce, first of all, he will be our first speaker, Mr. Stephen Stone from the United Nations Environment Program. We have Mr. Oliver Bochi. He is from the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation of the Republic of Ghana. And we have Dr. Christian Haubach from the INEC Institute at the University of Pforzheim in Germany. As you know, I'm the Deputy Director General of the Federation of German Industries, and in this capacity, I, together with others, founded an initiative this year on circular economy. We started in April, and a lot of interesting and well-known companies have already joined. And I'm very glad that we have 2 of our members on board today as speakers. First of all, it's Daniela Bollinger from the BMW Group, and it's Mrs. From Hahn from Aurubis Copper. We are very pleased to have you here today. And then a very warm welcome to Mrs. Miki Yokoyama. She's a board member of our BDE initiative on circular economy. She's advisor at Unternehmertum, and she's a venture partner at Pirate Impact. And she's going to discuss moderate the discussion later on. So very glad that you all took your time today and will talk about this very urgent and important strategic issue of circular economy. And with that said, thank you. And I will hand over to Mr. Stephen Stone now. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Holger. Thank you for this invitation from BDI. Great to be with you today to talk a little bit about the link between circular economy and the climate. I have a few slides that I want to share with you, but my main message is they are intimately linked. We cannot reach our climate goals without making our economies more circular. So I have a few slides. It's really a very simple message. It is about the urgency to move forward on circularity and some of the pathways to do so, and especially the role of business. I think this is a crucial discussion we're having this morning. So next slide, please. The challenge is very clear. Next slide. There are three major challenges, and they stem from the linearity in our economy. This is a diagram from the Circular Economy Group in the Netherlands, and it shows the 90 gigatons of raw materials that are transformed every year into goods and services that we consume for our well-being. And the other side of that diagram, you see this large plume. Those are climate emissions. Those are effluents. Those are pollution, essentially, that our economy produces. Our economy today is not at all circular. And this is a challenge that we all have. The result of this, next slide, please. If you're interested in that graphic, I recommend you go to it. It's circulareconomy.org. The result of this is an increasing amount of material flow, which we demand from our Earth every year. It was around 25 billion tons in the 1970s. This is now around 90 billion tons a year, approaching 100 billion tons of raw materials that we transform. And the line, the black line you see there is the decoupling. It's the efficiency line. So you see efficiency, material efficiency increasing through the 80s. And then after the year 2000, it starts to waver and decline. So this means we are not being more efficient in how we use our natural resources. This is very, very serious, because if we can't decouple our growth from our material use, we cannot tackle the climate challenge. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the upshot, of course, is that we're drawing down our natural wealth. This shows GDP growth over time. It shows investment in physical wealth, so infrastructure, produced wealth. The green line on the bottom is our natural capital. You may be familiar with this term. It's the value, the stock of all of our trees, our water, the minerals resources. We're drawing down our natural wealth to build our economic wealth. But that game can't go on forever. The results are very clear. Next slide, please. The climate result, rising climate instability. We know this is happening in real time. Next slide, please. The nature loss, the degradation of nature, and simply before our eyes, the mass extinctions, which are happening in all different continents in different ways. Next slide. And also a rising tide of plastic pollution. This is at UNEP what we call a triple planetary crisis. It's a climate instability crisis, it is a nature loss crisis, and it is a rising pollution and toxicity crisis, which essentially hits human well-being, it hits human health, but it also hits the health of our ability to generate prosperity into the future. Because without these three sort of baseline conditions, we are not able to produce wealth in the way that we should be. So this is the overview. I think there's one last slide here, which talks a little bit about the impact and, in a way, the challenge in front of us. So this is a stylized graph. There's a lot of information here, but essentially it's the footprint of an average person in a few different countries. So on the left-hand side, you see the footprint of a relatively high income country individual. This is a per capita footprint. On the right-hand side, you will see the footprint of a low-income country such as India. Or Oliver, you're coming in from Ghana today. Probably a footprint of a typical Ghanaian is also quite low. The challenge for all of us is to go from those 10 metric tons per capita per year, or in some countries, 18 metric tons per capita a year, down to something like 3 metric tons per capita by 2030 and 2 metric tons per capita by 2050. Colleagues, this is the challenge of our times. This is the biggest challenge we have ever faced, because if we can't do this, we don't stay within the 1.5 or the 2-degree limit. So we need to reinvent everything, everything we produce, everything we create, everything we consume. Next slide. Solutions. Fortunately, we have many, and circularity will be one of them. Next slide. So just to share with you a few ideas, circular economy, circularity, it goes by many names. Essentially, this is a very old idea. It's being a little bit smarter with your resource base. And we've seen countries around the world evolve with resource constraints and huge amounts of ingenuity. I'm thinking of Japan, some of the West Indian island countries, small island developing states. They always had major resource constraints, and they were always resource efficient and had a lot of circularity in their models. Next slide, please. At UNEP, we take a life cycle approach. That means from cradle to grave, and we look at how the resources come in, how they're converted into goods and services, and then ultimately where they end up. And here there's a lot of talk about things like extended producer responsibility, about footprinting, and the science is getting so much better. So we actually can track provenance, we can track use, we can track leakage. There's a wonderful array of science and instruments and toolkits for tracking circularity. And this is an area that we need to improve. Next slide, please. At UNEP, we've created something called the buildingcircularity.org platform. You can have a look at it. Holger, you mentioned the 4 R's, the 4 toolkits of circularity. At UNEP, we talk about the 9 R's. They're here on this slide. The very first one is refuse. If you don't want it in your life, in your household, don't take it. And that goes for plastic cups or plastic forks or whatever it might be that you don't want to see. But of course, there are others such as remanufacturing, reusing, recycling, repairing. All of these are parts of the circular economy, and they can create jobs. The whole remanufacturing and repairing, there are large industries here waiting to be created. Next slide, please. And the key message, circular economy sits in the core of the SDGs. There's actually an SDG, the Sustainable Development Goal 12, which talks about sustainable consumption and production. For me, this is just a code word for circular economy. And this sits at the very core of so many of the different sustainable development goals. If we want to reach the 2030 agenda, we need to take circularity very, very seriously. Next slide, please. Fortunately, there are many tools, there are many instruments. This is one, this is called the SDG 12 Hub. There's a lot of information here about tracking things like decoupling, which I spoke about earlier, but also what countries around the world are doing to advance their sustainable consumption and production, the bedrock of the circular economy. Next slide, please. So, 2 last ideas here. The first is the ask. Next slide. The challenge is colossal. It's huge. This is by far the biggest challenge we face in our generation. We need to reinvent the way we think about economics, the way we create value, our whole industrial base, our energy base. And for those countries who are starting out fresh, Oliver, like in your country in Ghana, where you don't have such a large industrial base, leapfrogging into the future already, it's a huge challenge, but together it can be done. And here's the ask. Next slide and last slide. So 4 asks from the business community, and I think we can have a discussion around these as well. So the first is taking a look at the high impact sectors of the economy. In that very first graph, you can imagine some are producing more, some are producing less of the footprint in terms of their dollar value of GDP produced. Those high impact sectors, cement, steel, mobility, food, these are the ones that we need to look at together to see how we can change the trajectory of those different high impact sectors. Second, we need to raise the bar on performance. There's some very, very interesting things that are being done across the field. UNEP works with the banking sector, the principles for responsible banking. Over 40% of assets held by banks subscribe to these principles. So there are ways of coming together as a business community, as an investor community, as a public policy community to raise the bar on these high impact sectors. The third is really to join hands around that task. And the fourth is looking at the tools we have like public procurement, like private procurement, so that the money flows to those innovators, those entrepreneurs that are creating the markets of the future. And I think And I hope we have many of them with us today for this conversation about circular economy and the climate. So with that, I turn over to my colleague who is co-speaking with me, Daniela. And Daniela, I think you've been introduced already, so I will just hand the floor directly to you.
Thank you so much. And I'm very happy that I will be the person who can talk about already a solution. So I would love to get you through our solution on what we actually exposed in the IAA this year from the BMW Group, the BMW iVision Circular. So what we actually did here the first time that we tried to give circularity a kind of shape. So I will love to show you first a movie, what it's a little bit about. So where do we come from? Of course, we are absolutely aware that we have to tackle CO2 emissions. We have a clear commitment to the Paris Climate Agreement, and we actually embedded sustainability not only in our sustainability report, no, we embedded it in our holistic reporting. So that means we're gonna take that serious. So what did that mean? Not only that we are committed to lower the CO2 footprint, but also that we want to go towards circular economy. So circular economy is something where you have to rethink the whole way you are doing business the way you did it. And it's not only about a product you actually have to reinvent. It's about the question, who are we? Why are we here? And what is our task? And how do we have to do it? And that is actually how design is approaching that topic. We were asked to envision the future 2040 with the idea of a holistic circular economy. And we actually came up with these claims. We have to start first to reimagine everything. And it was beautiful, Stephen, that you said that you have to re-question if you really have a need for if there's a purpose for the product itself. And that's exactly where you have to start from zero. It's not about only reduce, reuse, recycle. It's first rethink. So what we did is we really came up with a very, very tight idea and briefing. And this was the first time about a vision car on a very narrow briefing. And that's what I'm guiding you through a little bit. So we do have this holistic approach about circular design. And what does circular design mean for us? It's not only about the materials we use, it's also about the materials we don't want to use in the end. It's about less chemicals. It's about easy dismantling. And it's also about durability. So we actually narrowed it a little bit for the designers. But then, of course, we filled it up with a lot of information. So focus on the reduction. What you don't produce has no carbon footprint. Then don't use environmental dangerous substances, for example. Think on monomaterials. Make it simple and easy for dismantling. But all of that has to be physically appealing. It has to be on a very luxurious interpretation. It's not about suffering. It's not about lacking on anything. So the question for us was, what does circular design means for us as the BMW Group as a premium mobility provider? So it's about the question, how do you interpret the new materials? If we rethink all the materials, how would they look like? How can we manufacture them? So interesting was then the next step, where do we come from? I mean, where do we get this kind of like briefing from? And this is, again, is about our commitment to secondary first. We committed that we want to actually jump into over 50% usage of recycled materials an average per car in the future. Right now, we are around 30% in average. And this is already very tough because the industry we need for good quality recycled materials, we need our own systems running in circular loops. So this is a huge challenge for the industry. But even more, for me, was important to understand where do we have the biggest impact. And the biggest impact in the car industry is actually embedded in the steel, and iron, in light materials like aluminum. It is in polymers, which we use a lot. Also, of course, electronics. Also, how do we tackle it using natural grown materials? All of that, of course, you can tackle with the change of energy you use, regenerated energy, but then also about recycled materials. So the briefing then for the show car was pretty easy. Use only 4 materials, not more. Well, you can use less, but then in the end, it would be tough. So it's around use these materials. Imagine they're all 100% made from recycled content. That's how we can tackle the CO2 footprint, reduce it to the maximum, and then apply all this lower button red squares. So what kind of technology can you use, which would be the best way? How much of recycled material can we put in? Can we reduce as much as we can and then make everything dismantleable? Think in monomaterials. So that is this kind of like clever solution briefing. So the designers were not really amazed in the beginning, but on the other side, we love these challenges. It is about narrowing down the briefing to its max, opens up whole new creativity at designers. So that's exactly what it meant. It wasn't narrowing, it was opening up possibilities. And to give you a little bit of dive into mood boards, how we imagine dismantling, easy dismantling, just click, not gluing, not sticking it together, complicated. So if you see these images, you get an idea of an easy dismantling connection. What do recycled plastic, what does it mean to us? It means that we have to consider that the surfaces might not be all AA perfect surfaces. So why don't we play with it and make marble look beautiful new aesthetics? So polymers that show the life cycle, how beautiful is that? Second, recycling aesthetics. We really have to rethink in new production methods that we do not have single pieces reproducible in the same level, each of it. It might differentiate. And so we call it the beauty aesthetic, that plastic can tell a story and every piece might look different. But that's something where you have to create a perfect harmony. Reduction. Don't use paint. Paint has a huge impact. So why don't we just leave the paint out? So the imagination of the designers were using heat. Heat actually on steel makes beautiful colors. You might not control that 100%, but the overall aesthetics might look beautiful. You might use electrolytics for aluminum, like the MacBook Air. So we really start rethinking the whole process of how we build a car. And the same with the plastics. Even so, glass we were considering of recycled content. So continuing, this is the car. So apparently the whole exhibition on the IAA and also the tour we are on at the moment really means a lot to the press, and they really understand that we found a language, a kind of design language where you can actually understand how circularity could look like, how it could work. We designed an app where you can actually go through AR into the car and see all honest informations about circularity, about our numbers, about our visions. So this is one way to express how circularity could look like in a product. Thank you so much. So thank you so much for listening, and I hand over now.
Thank you, Daniela. I think we can continue right away with the panel discussion. So good morning and welcome everyone. And yeah, thank you, Daniela, for this inspiring presentation. Also to see, it's very interesting to see what a solution can look like. And with that, we come to our panel discussion, trend, topic, or climate savior. What do we need for a circular economy to become the driver in climate mitigation? My name is Miki Yokoyama. Holger Lösch already introduced me briefly. I'm a board member of the BDI initiative, Circular Economy. I'm also an advisor at Unternehmertum, which is Europe's largest entrepreneurship center. And I'm actually a full-time venture partner at Pirate Impact, which is a family office focused on impact investments. So to give the viewers a little bit of context of the web talk or of the panel discussion, we all know carbon dioxide levels and other greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are reaching new records every year. Climate change related incidents are becoming more and more frequent, visible in intense storms, floods, sea level rise, and also more and more extreme heat events. And the Paris Agreement aims to tackle climate change by keeping the global temperature rise well below 2 degrees Celsius in comparison to pre-industrial levels. But at the same time, and also Stephen Stone touched upon this in his presentation, resource extraction has tripled since 1970 and is projected to grow by another 70% by 2050. And resource extraction and also the processing of natural resources make up half of greenhouse gas emissions, while also contributing to global biodiversity loss, soil degradation, and water stress impacts. So we're in a crisis, as also Stephen Stone said. And the circular economy, which is the repurpose, like recycling, redistribution, refurbishment, repair of materials, and much more, is increasingly explored and discussed as a tool for climate mitigation, and is also already offering many, many innovative solutions. And the concept is really much more than the safe and environmentally friendly management of waste. It's about disrupting an entire understanding of a linear production and to change this to a circular one. So nonetheless, circular economy tools are also embedded in different societal, political, environmental, and economic contexts. And we really need a very strong international dialogue across stakeholders, very good frameworks, and a global approach in which economic growth can be decoupled from inefficient resource consumption. So the focus of the panel now is to explore how to enable and also to leverage the concept of circular economy as an effective climate mitigation tool on a company level, on a policy, national, international level, and also to discuss its limitations and opportunities to really level the path to a sustainable society. And I'm very happy to welcome the panelists of this session, Marie-Christine van Haan, Vice President Corporate External Affairs at Aurubis AG. Then we've got Stephen Stone, Deputy Director, Economy Division of the United Nations Environment Programme. Got Oliver Bochi, Special Advisor to the Minister of the Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation for the Republic of Ghana, and also member country representative for Ghana in the African Circular Economy Alliance. And last but not least, Dr. Christian Haubach, Managing Director of INEC, the Institute of Industrial Ecology at the University of Potsdam. Welcome, everyone. So I'd like to start with you, Oliver. Africa is among the most vulnerable continents regarding climate change and also severely impacted by, for example, sea level rise, droughts, or also water scarcity. And the country of Ghana has already taken a few steps to promote circular economy, becoming the first African member in the Global Plastic Action Partnership and exploring circular economy also as a tool in areas of e-waste. And at the same time, also Ghana is a member country of the African Circular Economy Alliance, a government-led coalition that promotes circular economy or circular economy ecosystem in Africa. So Oliver, can you tell us a little bit more, how much attention does Ghana's government already give to circular economy as a tool for climate mitigation?
Thank you very much, Anna. Ghana takes the concept of circular economy very, very seriously. In the last 4 years, since this current government took office, we passed both legislation and enacted policies that are firmly based on circularity. The first one we did was a law that was passed in 2016, and you've already mentioned it, and that had to do with the control and management of hazardous and electronic waste. It's called 917, and its implementation actually started in 2017. It faced a few challenges, but we are on our way. And one of the principal elements of that is extended producer responsibility scheme that places responsibility on those who are importing electronic equipment into the country. They have to pay some kind of a levy. The second initiative is actually on the management of plastics. And Ghana released its National Plastics Management Policy in 2018, and that led to the partnership with the World Economic Forum under the GPAP initiative. That has really transformed our outlook towards circularity, and this has enabled the Global Environment Facility of JEP to grant Ghana about $7 million to establish a circular economic framework for the management of plastics in the country. And that will be disbursed starting from in February of 2022. Mm-hmm. At the same time, the Canadian government has also seen the strides that Ghana is making and has offered to provide an additional equivalent to about $6 million for us to establish a center of excellence for circular economy in Ghana, which is intended to serve as a model for the rest of the countries in the region. So this is going to provide an opportunity for us to look at several aspects of circularity, and especially how it is related to climate change and other environmental issues. So we take it very, very seriously, and you can see that as small as we are making strides towards that.
Okay. Also a good inspiration for other countries as well. So how do you think will a stronger circular economy also affect linear global supply chains?
Well, Ghana as a small country sometimes has very, very little influence on global supply chains. However, we believe that when the world transitions to circularity, every country is going to matter, especially in areas like Ghana and other developing countries, where we have weak infrastructure for the collection of waste and the management of waste in general, and where we lack both the technology and the know-how and other things to do what is required. If we don't have strong linkages to the developed partners and are working very closely with them, we become the weakest link in the chain, and that can be allowed to happen. And so I'm hoping that small as we are going to be empowered and resourced to be able to play our role so that the transition becomes real.
Okay. And Mr. Haubach, I'd like to continue with you. So the Institute for Industrial Ecology is a research institute at the University of Pforzheim. And the Institute analyzed energy and material flows at the interface of technosphere and ecosphere, I learned. And also your personal research focus covers areas such as life cycle assessment, input-output analysis, sustainable consumption, and carbon footprint assessment. And there was a recent publication also claiming that in Germany's emission balances, the greenhouse gas quantities co-created outside German national borders were forgotten or not included. And this is especially important because roughly the same amount of emissions is caused outside Germany by the import of raw materials and other goods as is released domestically, right? So if we restrict the climate footprint to our own territory, that basically bears the risk of not effectively addressing climate change. So in your opinion, how can circular economy take on a benefiting role in emission balances?
Actually, all the secondary materials we have here in Germany or in our domestic country. So if it is preferable to use secondary materials from the climate protection point of view because they are less energy intensive compared to primary materials. So if you look at the linear supply chain from raw material extraction to the producer, some primary materials cause 10 times to 50 times higher CO2 emissions compared to secondary materials.
Mm-hmm. And is it a rule always that recycling of metals is always more climate friendly than the use of primary resources?
So it depends on the recycling systems and concentration of materials or secondary materials in the waste system. So if you have a very low concentration of the secondary materials, you need a lot of effort to collect and process these secondary materials. So you need a lot of energy. So there's a trade-off if you have a dissipative use of some materials.
For what materials is it then better to recycle, and for what materials would you say is the primary use more climate friendly or has a lower greenhouse gas consumption or lower greenhouse gas emissions?
So you have to, you cannot say this material or that material. So it is the degree of recycling. So if you already have a high degree of recycling in your economy, so 90% of all the waste is recycled, then the further few percent cause a lot of energy intensity to do this recycling of the last percent. So you have to concentrate on the first things first. So Mr. Stone showed in the slides in his presentations that we have virtually no recycling at all. So, okay, let's do recycling and we can use a lot of good things and we can do a lot of reducing of CO2 emissions or greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay. In continuing with Aurubis, so Aurubis is a member company of the BDI Initiative Circular Economy, and the company is a leading global copper recycling and also provider of non-ferrous metals. And their materials and products are used in everyday or in everyone's lives, basically. So customers of Aurubis are companies in semi-finished products, electrical, electronics, chemical industries, and also suppliers for renewable energies, construction, and automotive materials, or automotive industries, sorry. And Aurubis also recently announced the construction of a recycling plant in the state of Georgia in the United States. And this is a very important step in also an international circular economy. So Marie-Christine, how does Aurubis measure and also guarantee the climate friendliness of its different metals, and what are the big challenges here?
Thank you, Miki. Also, thank you everybody for having me. Yes, I'd like to come to your question in a second, but there's so many things I would like to refer to the marvelous presentations that were held before me.
Sure.
And the most important part of all this, well, first of all, Daniela, thank you very much that BMW is focusing on the recyclability and on the accessibility of the materials, because this is definitely one of our biggest challenges when it comes to recycling. And Christian, you mentioned that it doesn't depend on the material as on the metal or on the element you want to recycle. It depends on the construction, on the structure of the material input you're getting, how complicated, how energy intensive and how resource intensive, also how emission intensive the recycling process will be. But the very most important, the most important point I want to make is Aurubis is, as you just referred to, we are the biggest company worldwide when it comes to metal recycling. We're among the biggest producers of metals. We are one of the, but we are definitely one of the leading companies when it comes to metal recycling. 45% of the metals of the copper we produce also already now derived from recycling material that is way above the global average. So we have been developing that path for a long time, and we know that we are on a good track, because bottom line, obviously, producing from recycling is beneficial for us all, and it is the way to go. This is also the reason why we're intensifying, and you refer to our upcoming project, this enormous investment in the US. So we're completely dedicated, convinced, absolutely firm on that this is the right way to go. But, and this is the very important point I want to make, this desired sustainable economy and sustainable we're aiming at, it is very metals intensive. You will not proceed with electric mobility, neither with renewable energies or with digitalization, if you do not have vast amounts of metals. So just to give and this is not something I came up with, but it's we have proof for that. I think basically everybody knows it, but the World Bank, to quote somebody, some honorable institution, the World Bank estimates an increase in demand for metals for the clean energy transition of up to 1,500%. This is, so just let that number sink in. We will have this increase in metal need of 1,500%. So obviously, if we speak about all this, recycling alone will not be able to meet these needs in the foreseeable future, not at all. So what we really have to aim at when we're talking about how to do and how to be successful with this energy transition, with the societal transition, and in order to tackle climate change effectively, we have to see for a sustainable way of sourcing from primary sources and developing further circular economy. This is extremely important. I just wanted to make that point in the first hand. So really go for a sustainable procurement from raw materials from both sources. You cannot, it's, from my working experience, I noticed that there's this growing awareness for circular economy, which obviously we support very strongly and like it. But we in the last period of time, we have seen that there is among some groups, people, stakeholders who have the sense that recycling will solve it all. It won't. We will need so much resources, so that we need to go different ways and proceed it all. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. So, as you pointed out, materials and products of Aurubis are an essential part of global supply chains. And what is crucial, in your opinion, on a policy level to really establish circular economy as a key driver for climate mitigation?
Well, we discussed already the accessibility or the possibility of recycling in terms of what's the input material. What does the input material look like? So having a strong commitment of producers of end products or OEMs or whoever of electronic industry to understand that responsibility they have in design for recycling. That is very important, because the more recycling friendly products we have on the market, the better recycling will work on our end. For a company like Aurubis, the two major important things are affordable energy, plenty of green energy, also access to plenty of green energy at reasonable prices, because a company like Aurubis is in a quite tough competitive situation with international competitors. And if you have others who just don't have the sustainability needs in terms of reporting or in terms of energy access, we won't be as successful as we are at the moment still. So we need vast amounts of green energy, and we have some kind of a concern that with these great ideas a German government or EU Commission is having of how the world and how our nation or our continent should look like, it won't work if we don't have plenty of energy, and it must be green, because our Scope 2 emissions are the ones we have to focus on now. And the other one is that low carbon technologies. I mean, we are as climate friendly in our production processes as we are, because we have invested and innovated all the time over the last years in terms of improving our plants, our technologies, our processes. But investing in low carbon technologies at the moment is still way more expensive than sticking with the old mechanisms, and that must change for sure as well. And then if I look here at my points I wanted to make, it's certainly that we would need a very good working carbon leakage protection for the European market.
Thank you very much for your insights. And I'd like to turn to our fourth panelist here, Stephen Stone. So according to the United Nations Environment Programme, climate change is the ultimate threat multiplier for states, societies, and also ecosystems. And UNEP also says that circularity and sustainable consumption and production are essential for delivering on every multilateral agreement, from the Sustainable Development Goals to the Paris Agreement and also to the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. So Stephen, from your perspective, how significant would you estimate the social impact potential of circular economy as a climate mitigation tool?
Yeah, it's potentially quite large. And, you know, the Secretary General referred to Code Red several weeks ago before Glasgow, and it really is a bit of a sort of a wake-up call to all of us. It's wonderful to hear all of the innovation that's happening, and Marie-Christine, what's happening in your industry, it's heartening, because we see that you're taking it very, very serious, and the innovation is coming. But it probably also needs to be coupled with the policy measures which support it. And that's a dialogue, right? That's not sort of a one-way street. You asked about the potential for circularity to help tackle the climate challenge. I think actually this data is coming from the International Resources Panel. And I think perhaps it was Holger who said right up front that half of the total emissions are essentially energy, right, or energy related. So that energy transition that colleagues have been speaking about is very, very important. But approximately the other half is emissions which are embedded in goods and services. So the cars we build, the food we eat, all of this, and that is where circularity can come in. So circularity can have a tremendous impact in reaching climate stability into the future. That race to zero that we talk about at the UN, circularity can be a very, very big part of that. So it's heartening to have this dialogue. It's great to see the innovations. I think there's one other thing I have to put on the table here, which is leave no one behind. And again, Oliver, I'm thinking about you and Ghana. You know, you have a development imperative in front of you of raising the quality of life for your people. So how do we join hands across that technology spectrum so that circularity doesn't remain a concept that's applicable in some countries, but not in all? Thanks.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, good point. And if you think on an international level, what do you think still needs to be done, or what would you wish for, or what's still ahead of us when it comes to implementing circular economy as an effective climate mitigation tool?
You know, I'm seeing so many things happening. But just this web talk is wonderful. My huge thanks to BDI for hosting us all today. You know, the European Union has created something called the Global Alliance for Resource Efficiency and Circular Economy. That's a really, really important forum, a space for policy dialogue and also for business engagement. There is an Africa Circular Economy Alliance, which you mentioned earlier, which Ghana is a main player. So there's a lot of different things happening where industry, policymakers, and civil society are coming together to sort of, let's say, raise the bar on ambition levels. And there's one other thing I would leave here, Mickey, which is 2022 is 50-year anniversary of Stockholm Conference, which created UNEP. That was the first time the environment came onto sort of the world stage, and we're approaching that 50-year anniversary. So this is a great time to think about how we partner across industry, across governments, across civil society to reach these challenges that are in front of us on circular economy.
Well, thank you very much. And I hope also that this talk inspires many more to do also more in the field of circular economy as a climate mitigation tool. I'd like to wrap it up with a quick round, a quick question to all of you. And also Daniela, if you like, who's also still on the call. So is there any aspect or personal experience or achievement in the field of circular economy that motivates you to go on with your work and promote circular economy as a climate mitigation tool, but also in general to create a more sustainable society and economy? So what motivates you to go on? Maybe starting with you, Stephen.
Thanks very much. You know, but it's interesting. I was thinking about this before we went live today. For me, circularity is really about, in French, they say retrouvailles. It's about refinding your roots, because originally the Earth is entirely circular. Everything is a closed loop system. We industrialized because of innovation and ingenuity, but in a way we innovated outside of the loop. So I think it's about refinding circularity in our industrial systems that create wealth, that mimic the beauty of nature.
Okay. So Oliver, what motivates you to go on with your work? Oh, sorry, you're on mute, Oliver. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Ghana, for some reason, has become a role model for the rest of Africa. This is historic, you know, because we were the first country south of the Sahara to gain independence, and that is what led to a lot of African countries gaining independence. And that has really been our motivation, that we try to show the way by taking bold initiatives. Our ministry is responsible not just for the environment, but also for science, technology, and innovation, its development and application for national development. And so we are combining the two in using science, technology, and innovation as tools to harness our resources in an environmentally friendly and sustainable way. And these are the things that really motivate us. Personally, because of my background in technology and digital transformations, I see a lot of linkages between what we are doing in the environment, the circular economy that is fast approaching us, and how we can leverage on science and technology to not just embrace it, but also make sure that it works successfully for all of us. And so these are the things that motivate me personally, and I think for our country, the fact that what we are doing is also showing the way for the rest of Africa. is great motivation for us as a nation.
Thank you, Oliver. Marie-Christine, what about you?
Well, at the moment, I would say it's really the US plans we already talked about, because it has been a great journey so far. We just announced that we're going to do it. Last week, we signed the contract with the facility construction company. The very special thing about it is that there is no such plant and no such recycling smelter in the US so far. All scraps, all secondary metal materials the US produce, and as we all know, that's a lot, as everywhere in the Western world at least, is exported or used as landfill mass. So we are very passionate and very looking forward to make a difference here and to start working on that market too.
Very nice. And then Daniela, what about you?
What Stephen says was really inspiring me a lot, and it's really about closing the circles and going back to a kind of natural flow, but also understanding that the relevance of being working in an industry who is on the producing level. It creates a kind of vision for us to be relevant in the next 50, 100 years again, and not going from a linear system into somewhere not being able to think about a really prosperity in the future. But circular economy can actually let us healthy grow, but not on the usage or abusing materials or countries or anything. So it's a holistic approach, which really makes me extremely happy to go this way.
Oh, that's very nice. And last but not least, Christian.
So as a researcher from the field, we observe so many good examples of best practice in companies for resource efficiency and recycling, and we see so much power in this field. And I think there is so much room for innovators to develop new business models which help to put this circular economy on the road. And we have new ideas if you connect it to digitization. We even talked not here about it, but there are so much ideas that you do a better recycling, better sorting of materials. There's so much room for these ideas here that I am in a good mood that we tackle this decoupling from economic activity and CO2 emissions production.
Well, thank you very much, and also thank you to all the panelists who contributed in this very quick panel discussion today. We're already at the end of our time for now. And as you know, also that what Holger Lösch said in the beginning, the German industry sees circular economy as a big opportunity for innovation, also climate protection and raw material security, which is also the reason why the BDI has founded its own circular economy initiative in April this year, which many companies have already joined. And I think we can only turn circular economy in an effective climate mitigation tool if all actors in global value chains and supply chains are addressed and also integrated, and if we identify the right parameters to enable circular economy as an effective climate mitigation tool. But there's still a lot of collaborative work ahead of us, and it's a very complex topic, so it's far too short to discuss it and solve it in a half an hour or an hour. But I hope and think this discussion provided us with new insights that we can all take with us and take it as an inspiration for our daily working lives, also personal lives. And with that, again, a big thank you to the panelists and the guests today. And with that, I'll hand over to Klaas Ullmann.
Yeah, Miki, thank you very much. Thank you very much to all of you for this inspiring hour. I have the honor to speak some quick last sentences as Executive Director of the new BDI initiative on circular economy. And let me frame it like this. From this hour, one word really stays in my mind. It's the word rethink. I think circular economy is a lot about rethinking systems, production, consumption patterns, and resource use. So let me make 3 short points. We think, from my opinion, start a dialogue about rethinking the sustainable use of resources in an international framework. As Stephen said, we have to rethink the phrase "leave no one behind" for a circular economy on a global level. And it includes, of course, the reduction of using some resources to meet our climate goals. But as well, we have to rethink, I think, the connection between the challenges of a circular economy, climate change, and what Marie-Christine, for example, says, the energy transition. We need a lot of green energy for new processes, for recycling, etc. And last point, we have to rethink design questions, as it was really impressive mentioned by Daniela. We have to rethink our understanding from good and nice design, but we have to design products that are fit for circularity. So that from as some last points for the future, we have to rethink. We as the initiative want to be part of the dialogue to rethink our systems in the economy, our economies on national, European, and international levels. So thanks a lot again to Stephen Stone, Daniela Bollinger, Mr. Hauwach, Ms. von Ahn, Mr. Bocci, the whole team of the BDI, and Mr. Lösch. And of course, thank you, Mickey, for the great moderation today. So have a great day, all of you.